Hey everybody, before we get this glaze session going, I want to point out that most of my footage and a good chunk of research that I did for this project was pulled from the YouTube channel Archipel. They did a two-part interview docu thing on our old man here, and instead of crediting him through the text in the corner, I figured it'd be a little more appropriate to tell you about it, just because of how much I got out of those videos. So, go watch those. After this one. Shinji Mikami is a 59-year-old man who's coming up on 35 years of work in the games industry. Throughout his career, he's given us some of the most influential and some of the best video games of all time. Mikami's a legendary creative, and it's crazy how close we were to living in a timeline where none of this ever happened. He didn't even like games growing up. He only started enjoying them in high school, where a friend of his kept nudging him in that direction. In 1990, Mikami was invited to a Capcom job fair by another friend of his, and his only justification for going was because they offered free food. His experience at the event eventually ended up changing his mind. The ambition and excitement on display by the people there captivated him. Back then, Capcom's application process involved the written test followed by an interview. After both were finished, employees were given a copy of Willow for the NES, signifying that they were accepted and now work for the company. Out of about 50 people, around a dozen of them, including Mikami, were told to leave. He had failed the written test and he was rejected. A week later, though, he got a call and was told there was a mix-up. He actually ended up getting hired. Turns out his superiors called HR, and even though he did score low on the test, they needed the manpower. And so, by what seems like pure chance, Shinji Mikami started working at Capcom. His first project was working as a planner on a weird little Game Boy game before eventually graduating to a designer role on some licensed Disney games, one of which ended up being one of Capcom's biggest SNES releases. After some time in the trenches, he was approached by his superior, Tokuro Fujiwara, with a proposition. Fujiwara really liked the NES game Sweet Home, a turn-based RPG with some pretty banging music. Even though it didn't sell well, he believed in the concept. So he asked Mikami to create a horror game based on Sweet Home's foundation, implying that he wanted him to head the project. From a planner and designer on licensed baby games to a director of an all-new game on an all-new console. Shinji Mikami took the challenge head-on, and the rest is history. There were a few people working under him on RE named Hiroki Kato, Kazuhiro Oyama, and Hideki Kamiya. These are people who would go on to direct sequels to the original Resident Evil, and this is where we get into one of the most interesting things about Shinji Mikami. Ever since the beginning of his career, he's been actively and selflessly teaching and uplifting the people around him. In a Japanese interview published in 2000, Mikami was asked about his underlings specifically, and if he felt he uplifted them following the development of Resident Evil. He answers a little humbly, actually apologizing for the development environment he created and wished he could have done it differently. But that doesn't seem to be the sentiment of the people he was shepherding. During the development of RE2, Hideki Kamiya took the directorial seat, with Mikami playing his role as a producer. They did not agree on a lot of what the game should ultimately be. They kept giving developers different directions at the same time, and everybody was starting to get frustrated, not knowing who to listen to. And after a lot of this back and forth, Mikami eventually decided to take a step back. He went from having an intimate involvement in Resident Evil 2's creation to acting more like a guide, only wanting to see the game once a month. Mikami would be in the director's seat plenty more times in the future, but as something you might be starting to learn, it isn't always about him.
I wanna know your name, wanna know everything about you, girl. Wanna know your name. I wanna know your name, wanna know everything about you, girl. Wanna know your name.
John Johannes is a 30-something looking year old guy. I couldn't find this guy's age. from Long Island, New York, who lives and works in Japan as a video game developer. And I don't have any cool, dramatic interview footage of him, so you're just gonna have to bear with me. He's been working in the industry for over a decade at well-known studio Tango Gameworks exclusively. Tango was founded in 2010 by someone you may know about with a particular goal in mind. Johannes had no aspirations to be a game developer at first. His passions actually lied more with music, which is eventually going to make a lot of sense. But he did really like video games. So when he saw Tango Gameworks was hiring with no previous experience required, he applied. He ended up getting the job and was immediately put on The Evil Within as a level designer. According to him, the creation of The Evil Within lacked any kind of organization. Tango's level designers were given a lot of slack and were told to make pretty much whatever. Johannes had to learn everything on the fly. That's probably one reason why I didn't like the game, but after learning everything that I have, and hear me out on this, I don't think the game was really meant to be good. The development of Resident Evil 2 was kind of a turning point in Mikami's career. He would go on to direct games after RE1, but even the ones he led were layered with these stories and decisions of using his influence to help other striving creators get their passion projects off the ground. The most famous one is probably Resident Evil 4. Hideki Kamiya was supposed to direct that one too, but after his concept got a little too out there for Capcom, it got scrapped and Mikami took the director's seat again. But instead of snuffing out Kamiya's idea entirely, he pushed Kamiya to make a different game with that foundation. And that's how we got Devil May Cry. Shinji Mikami's goal with Tango Gameworks was to give young creators a place to learn and thrive. The Evil Within wasn't supposed to be Shinji's big return to survival horror. It wasn't even supposed to be his moment. It was supposed to be John's. When it came time to pitch DLC for The Evil Within, Johannes had ideas. Not only did Mikami like them, he put Johannes in the director's chair. From level designer with no experience to director in a few short years. He was being given his shot out of the blue, just like Mikami had gotten his over 25 years ago.
前のああいうバイオっぽいゲームを作ってほしいってお金を出すわけじゃないですか。やっぱりある程度ビジネスとして成功確率を上げたい、安心感を得たいというとこからそういう流れになってきて、どんどんその若い人にチャンスが回らないっていう。それはもう
John Johannes would go on to direct both of the Evil Within's DLCs, and after that, a whole-ass sequel. Mikami's mentorship style was similar to his time on Resident Evil 2, hanging back, meeting periodically, letting people make mistakes on their own. I haven't played the Evil Within 2, but it looks like this was a very small improvement over the original. But for Johannes' first full game? Not bad at all, dude. Others at Tango would eventually get their shot, with Ghostwire Tokyo being headed by Ikumi Nakamura, and taken over by Keiji Kimura after she left. This got an alright reception, but it didn't sell great. I've heard some good things, but Tango wasn't quite there yet. They couldn't survive on status for very much longer. We had to start seeing some results. Enter John Johannes. According to him, Hi-Fi Rush was hard to get off the ground. Game Informer has a great article about it that you should go read, but basically the concept was unlike anything Tango or its parent company Bethesda or its parent company Microsoft had really done, so everything about the pitch had to be perfect. And after that got greenlit, guess who was executive producer? The Pillar himself. Mikami said that God Hand was the only game he made that he ever truly wanted to. 100% his vision with 0 people getting in the way. This was Johannes' passion project, and I know Mikami saw something in that. Hi-Fi Rush was shadow dropped at an Xbox event early in 2023, and it made huge waves. I remember losing my shit at the trailer, buying it immediately and playing through the whole thing. I had a really good time. This was it, man. Tango's first guaranteed banger, one that won awards and got the studio shut down and put John Johannes on the map. And wait. Yeah. Just over a year later, Tango was shut down alongside Bethesda's Arcane Austin. Arcane is one story. They had just released Redfall, a game nobody liked and whose development cycle led to most of the core talent leaving the studio. But Hi-Fi Rush had just come out. A sequel was in pre-production. They were on top. What happened? For all the hype that Hi-Fi Rush got, it did not sell well. Xbox Game Pass was the main way people played this game, and Hi-Fi isn't really something that got people to subscribe, much less pay for outright. I don't think it's unlikely that Tango's chances of staying open went way down after Mikami left the studio. Shortly after Hi-Fi came out, he dipped, and he actually wanted to leave years ago, but he wanted to see this project through. One of the biggest problems with the games industry today is how long games take to make. Not because they're super expensive to do now, or because we don't get a new entry in our favorite franchise every couple years anymore, although those are problems. It sucks because there are so many people chewed up and spit out every day, be it the job insecurity or the focus tested shit they end up being forced to do because the financial risk is too high. There's no time or money to spare to find new Shinji Mikamis or Hideki Kamiyas. No small risks allowed, only huge gambles that never fucking work. And I guess that's why I'm so interested in making videos about these storied game directors. The ones who started early are the last group of people who will have any kind of legacy in this industry. And that's why I'm coming out on the other side of this video with such an appreciation for Shinji Mikami. He called this a long time ago, and he made an entire company to fix the problem before it even started. And after he left that one, he did it again. He's fucking cool. By the grace of God, Tango and the Hi-Fi Rush IP were bought from Microsoft by another company, and it's getting a second chance. John Johannes is still there alongside some other core members, and they're working on a sequel. That wouldn't have happened without Hi-Fi Rush, without Mikami giving Johannes his shot on The Evil Within, without Mikami's career-changing choice back during RE2, or without that random HR guy changing his mind 35 years ago.